Matt, we're going over this whole Fort Hood shooting, maybe for the last time. I don't know how much more I can put on the record here, going through some of the potential theories involved in this, because there isn't really any answers to the questions, more questions than answers. And, of course, as always, when we get to the bottom of this, cui bono, who benefits from this, and could they logically be behind it? Or was it just as the media told us? Because one of the problems I have, sir, is that when we hear all of the lies and the spin, and then immediately it turns into a terrorist attack, and we look at how all of that plays out through the loss of liberties, through the advancement of war and the war machine and the Leviathan in general, we have to look and say, was it worth it enough for them to stage this and pull it off? And that doesn't even get into the new gun laws we're probably getting through due to something like this.
Well, they always have the legislation on deck, without a doubt. And you're asking who benefits. I know one thing as far as this case, the war effort benefits, because they're going to spin it as a way to try and say that the radical Islamists have infiltrated our media. We had another shooting at a recruiting center earlier this year in June, and, you know, I started being concerned about that whole scenario that really, and I had warned about it. I did a show in March 6th entitled Red Alert Mass Shootings in 2009, where I pretty much laid out the situation where this is the new false flag terrorism, and this could have been one of those cases.
Yeah, because anything bigger certainly kind of looks like egg on the face of the Obama administration, as if they would have been awake, maybe they could have prevented it. This is something, these lone nut shooters, well, what are we going to do? And there might be a lot more of these, as you just adequately pointed out. I just got this from Super Mario, one of our great contributors over the years, a great supporter of our work, and also a military man himself. He says, quote, "From my military experience, I know that officers often coordinate security alert drills inside military bases. For the purpose of, quote, training, they play the role of the bad guys," that being, again, the officers. He says, "One time I almost shot a Navy lieutenant because they did not tell me it was a drill or not." Also, recently, the military base has started to use Middle Eastern servicemen for role-playing during terror exercises. It would be interesting to find out if Hassan was part of the security training personnel. Here's an officer. They use officers. As we know, they use Middle Eastern servicemen for playing the role during these terror exercises. Could Hassan have been one of these? And then, again, shot to shut him up so that he can be the perfect patsy. In other words, is it possible he never fired a shot? You want to test his hands for gunpowder, Matt, or is that completely out of our hands now?
I think they definitely should be tested, without a doubt. I mean, there's a lot of questions that are still completely unanswered, and the fact they're going to do this in a military tribunal doesn't mean that they're going to get answered. So that is a very interesting point, and that brings me back to my point, which is these drills that are going on around elementary schools, high schools, military bases, they are actually creating a scenario where people, in some cases, have no idea that this isn't real. So if those people are scared because their kids got hit with a paintball in the head, a red paintball in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and they thought that they were actually getting shot, what is to say that on a military base where they have these drills all the time, that people would see this scenario and think that this has got to be a drill? That is a dangerous point where we are diluting the situation. I don't know how much it's helping.
Well, based on all the testimony, it seems clear that unannounced surprise terror drills are standard operating procedure at Fort Hood and probably other military bases as well. They are frequent enough to be the first thing many soldiers, including at least one officer, thought was happening. The drills designed to be realistic as possible, but the acme of realism is reality, real killing, which can occur through small but divisive changes in the unfolding of the drill. We may therefore be dealing with a drill which has been taken live or flipped live, as so often happens in these terror incidents. Did Hassan, Major Hassan, think he was attending the drill? I think that's just a great question. I would love to, again, have access to the forensics involved in this case, none of which was mentioned. I mean, you would think at this point, we've got the guy. We got him. And we have many eyewitnesses that point him out as the shooter, and he's got gunpowder all over his hands, and here's a picture, here's video of him doing it, all of this, but we don't get any of that.
Yeah. Well, just like you said, Jack, a military base is the ultimate place to be able to control information.
That's right.
And so that does raise a lot of questions, because they're not going to publicly give any information that they don't have to. Plus, I think the seed was already laid. I'm starting to believe that there is an active operation of trying to fuse the views of a radical Islamist with the disgruntled youth of America.
And
we already had
the
this
anti-war movement in general, yeah.
This Arkansas guy who shot somebody at a recruiting center. Then you had, the shooter in Binghamton, New York, who went into for people who are getting citizenship in America, who kills all kinds of people. Then you have a situation in Pittsburgh where the kid kills the cops, but they're saying that he was a 9/11 truther. Then it's just crazy. Even the guy also in Pennsylvania who shot up the health club. It was some aerobics class. He went in there and started shooting women. Now they're saying that he bought his gun the same place that Cho bought his gun. And it's just really strange how all this is being weaved into what looks like a psychological program.
And it all seems to be set up in advance, which certainly, that's one of the things that bugs me the most. The plants, the spins, seem to give this whole false flag kind of flavor. We saw what happened, how they tried to frame the Fort Dix plotters out there, and how when they went to court there was no evidence that they planned to attack Fort Dix at all. Now, if you asked Americans about that, and if they even remember it or heard of it, because there's been 20 other distractions since then, they'll just go with the official story. They won't remember what happened in court to these people. But the weeks before, we had all of these terror plots that were rounded up. The FBI was Johnny on the spot, the guy trying to blow up the building, I guess, in Dallas, and another one in Denver, if you remember. None of these worked because the government cries wolf so much that it has almost no effect on the people in general. Weeks before the Fort Hood shooting, a bogus suicide grenade bomb article had been written and planted before this November 5th. And again, we always remember that's the Guy Fawkes Day, November 5th of 2009, and then found hours after the shooting and released to the AP when the FBI believed that Hassan was already dead, which he was supposed to be, I believe. Then you have this female officer who was given credit in the vein of Jessica Lynch for taking down this madman shooter, when it turns out she didn't actually do that at all. It was another officer. So that particular line of the story just completely has already fallen down. Then you've got the spun terrorist imam electronic connection to Yemeni, which has been denied and since even put aside. That's not going to stop the neocons and the talking heads from still using it. The Al-Qaeda connection, the spun 9/11 terrorist connection.
And then you got the internet posting from a Nidal Hassan, but they can't trace it back to him, who's talking about how that suicide bombing is justified. I mean, that's pretty bizarre that somebody who's getting ready to be promoted as a major would go ahead and post that under his name, and then after all this is over, to this day, the FBI says that they cannot trace whether that went back, that he actually wrote that posting.
Again, just throwing this out as a potential scenario. Major Hassan lying on the transit hall floor with 4 bullets in him, and the real gunman, potentially government agents, CIA, even Mossad, based on a prior 9/11 and other things I'll get to in a second, made their escape, shot at several SWAT and civil police before being apprehended and then released. The real shooters dressed in army fatigues, which was the initial report. They pumped Hassan with 4 bullets, believed him to be totally dead. One of the real gunmen may have been shot and killed during the escape. The real gunmen who escaped were apprehended and then released back into the hands of the CIA. What do you think, Hassan? If he isn't suicide, what do you think he's going to say? Is he going to go Khalid Sheikh Mohammed here and take credit for every terrorist attack in the history of the world? Again, you look at who benefits from this and you look at the past. Now, I had mentioned, I think we have to explore this a little bit, because again, the confrontations and the current atmosphere of which exists in the Middle East, the rabid manner of which Bibi Netanyahu wants to attack Iran, and how they want to continue to use their land grabs and genocidal takeovers on their neighbors, and the past, and the past.